Are you ready to realign, reignite, and reemerge? And if you saw the teaser video, you know where I'm coming from, and I know you are ready. I'm very honored to have our special guest this evening because he has been called one of the top 25 people who will help you reach your business and life goals by Success Magazine. And he joins a very special honored list with the likes of Oprah Winfrey. I also saw his video on GoCast, and for those of you who have seen it, fantastic video that it was on Facebook, 87 million views. He's the author of several books, Release Your Brilliance, as well as Release Your Leadership Brilliance. And he's worked with over 1,800 organizations in 49 countries with clients such as Microsoft, the Hilton Hotels, Google, MasterCard, just to name a few. He's had 30 years in the hospitality industry, serving as the director of sales for the Disney Institute, which is located at the Walt Disney World Resort. Now, ladies and gentlemen, he is a best-selling author, speaker, and breakthrough strategist. Please help me welcome Mr. Simon T. Bailey. Simon?
Hello, everyone. How are you? I was listening to you and I was wondering, who's that guy? I want to meet him.
Well, let me tell you something, Simon. You know, you put in your bio, it's included your breakthrough strategist, and it's not just about feel-good content, but you provide real-life deliverables that impact lives. And to our audience, I need you to know that I'm one of the people that Simon has impacted. And I need you to know, I met Simon in a time of my life when I was very frustrated and feeling very stuck. And I'm wondering how I got there. I had all these ambitions and great plans, but somehow I felt very stale and stagnant. And after doing some training with Simon, let me tell you, my world was a shift. Talk about realignment and re-emerging. And I was able to do some fabulous things, but I won't tell you all of that right now because I would love for you to have this conversation with Simon so that for those of you who may be feeling a little bit stuck given all these things this year, that you have an opportunity for this brilliant motivational life coach. So Simon, you're an author. You're a speaker, you're a coach, but where did this all start? I guess that might be good to give people some background.
Wow. So I grew up in Buffalo, New York, 35 years ago. Mom and dad loaded the family station wagon, drove me and my brother from Buffalo, New York down to Atlanta, Georgia, where they dropped me off at Morehouse College. And at the end of my freshman year at Morehouse, they called and said, we don't have the money to send you back to Morehouse, nor do we have money to bring you back home to Buffalo, but we do love you. And so now, if I was in Texas right now, they would say, bless his heart. So I dropped out of Morehouse, moved into a drug-infested community in the southwest part of Atlanta, Georgia. Only had a mattress on the floor, a bright green beanbag from the 70s, a couple of milk crates turned over with a black and white TV on top of it, with a hanger hanging out of the back of the TV with a piece of aluminum foil wrapped around the hanger. How many have a visual so far, right? And it's probably one of the lowest points of my life. And so I eventually did go back to school, got my master's, I got my undergrad, my master's. It just took me 10 years to do it. My parents said, it took you 10 years to finish your degree. I said, because you didn't pay, but I love you. So after living in Atlanta, I moved to Orlando, Florida, worked for Hyatt, eventually got on with Disney. And probably about 20 years ago, I was working at Disney, and whenever you work at Disney, Mickey Mouse rule number one is you never talk to the media unless authorized. And so one day I got a call from a journalist and he said, where do you see yourself 10 to 15 years from now? And I said, I see myself as the president and CEO of the Walt Disney World Resort and eventually the chairman and CEO of the Walt Disney Company. And he puts this in print. So the article comes out, page 12, Florida Business Trend magazine, February 2002. And you see this Godiva chocolate guy with the Mickey Mouse topiary behind me. And my boss called me in the office and he says, what were you thinking when you did this interview? And I said, Larry, I work at this company whose motto is, if your heart is in your dreams, no request is too extreme for when you wish upon a star, it makes no difference who you are. Funny today, not funny then. So let's just say Disney didn't fire me that day, but about a year later, I heard the footsteps coming and they were not singing. It's a small world after all. So that's a little bit of my backstory. I think you're on mute, Anik.
I love doing that, just talking on mute. But what is interesting, Simon, is from the very beginning, you were willing to take risk.
Yes.
You were willing to take risk. And I think that's something very important that we'll touch on a little later in this conversation. Something I think that for those of us who want to spark or restart,
Mhm.
looking at reinvention, we have to be willing to take risk. And that's often a very difficult conversation. And I think particularly this year is going to be important. In the teaser video, you talked about the next normal.
Yes.
Could you elaborate a little bit on what's the next normal?
So the next normal is a world of algorithms, automation, artificial intelligence. So when we look at what Amazon is doing, and from an algorithm standpoint, they have wired it so much so that people who buy this
Mm-hmm.
also buy this. That's
Mm,
proximity marketing because the algorithm pays attention to what you buy. So, what we have to begin to say is, how do we move quicker and faster than an algorithm? How do we think in a fresh new way? So,
mm,
those who do what we do must realize that customers no longer want a speech, they want you to be a solution to a problem. So, number one, how do I begin to address cognitive entrenchment?
mm,
Cognitive entrenchment is, I know what I know, but I don't want to step outside of what I know because I'm entrenched in the way I've always done it.
mm,
Edie Whitener, who is a futurist, I shared the stage with her a few years ago. She says that people know so much about what they know that they
mhm,
are the last to see the future differently. So,
mm,
in the next normal, either you change or you will be changed by change. That's the first thing. The
mhm,
second thing is, in the next normal, we are being invited to really think about, how do we create the future in the present. Now, what do I mean by that? Uh,
mhm,
for years ago, my parents always said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And what do I do to my 21-year-old and 18-year-old? What do you want to be when you grow up? And I had to go back and apologize to my children because that was the wrong question. The
mm.
question is, what problem have you been created to solve?
Oh, okay.
Because money moves toward a solution. So when you begin to answer the question, what problem have I been created to solve? You quit your job and you go to work, because
Mm,
a job stands for just over bored. But when you go to work, you understand that a paycheck is given to people who show up, but opportunities are given to men and women who think beyond what they're paid to do. So
mm,
in the next normal, everyone now must begin to think beyond what they're paid to do. And
mhm.
this leads me to the third point, and that is, you must see yourself as a slashy. Now, what is a
Mm,
slashy? A few
mhm,
years ago, I was in South Africa at an event that I had been invited to. They were honoring me at a dinner, and
mhm.
I'm sitting next to a gentleman named Trevor Sturdeman. And I said, Trevor, what do you do? He looked like he was maybe 20, 21. And he said, I'm a slashy. I said, what's a slashy? He
Mm.
said, I'm a digital photographer slash, I'm a fashion designer slash, I'm a computer
Oh.
programmer slash. And what I realized, I went all the way to South Africa to get free, because I had been shaped in a world where you could only do one thing.
Mm.
But now, in the next normal, we must become multidimensional in our thinking and be a slashy.
You know what? I love that term. Here in our context, we might talk about the side hustle, and we kind of, you know, whisper that, yes, this is my side hustle. But, I love the term the slashy because it says, to your point, we have to be more than just one thing. So absolutely love that term. But it just triggered a question. Sorry, they're going to come up as we talk. But is the slashy mentality reserved for people of a certain age? Because one of the things I've heard recently, as I embarked on something that was new, is that, well, you can do it because of your age. And I'm a young old,
So,
but I'm like looking at them, I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, at my age, I can't. So it almost seems like people feel like the younger you are, the more potential you have to be a slashy.
so no, being a slashy is not reserved for a specific age group. It's simply understanding when you are
Mm,
a slashy, you might be a hippo, but you act like a cheetah. What do I
mhm,
mean by that? So a cheetah is the swiftest hunter in Africa. A cheetah has dark tear marks under its eyes. So when it's in pursuit of its prey, it doesn't chase all over. It stalks its prey and it pounces it from 0 to 20 seconds. A hippo knows where the bodies are buried, knows where the landmines are, knows how to get things done that are not necessarily written down. Uh,
mhm.
I was talking with someone not too long ago, and they said, "What happens when you put a cheetah with a hippo?" They said, "You get a cheapo," but that's beside that's beside the point. Here's the thing. We all need to think about if I'm a hippo in my experience, how do I begin to associate with cheetahs? Because every cheetah needs a hippo and every hippo needs a cheetah. So, in
Mm,
other words, I must begin to look at my circle of influence and recognize whoever has my ear has my life. You can never go any further than your people group, than the people that are around you. So
mm,
if I'm to embrace the slashy thinking, I must be around individuals who challenge me out of
mhm.
my comfort zone and challenge me out of cognitive entrenchment.
Mm. So then, for the audience, that's a very important question to ask yourself. Who is in my circle? And start to reflect and consider, is there a slashy in your circle? If you're a hippo, do you have a cheetah? If you're a cheetah, do you have the hippo? Like, who is in your circle that helps to challenge your thinking? Because that's the only way you start the process of reinvention, right, Simon?
Totally. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Hmm.
So I have to be in a room that challenges me to grow and to no longer settle for the status quo.
Hmm. And it's so funny because a lot of us like comfort. And sometimes comfort comes with the people we surround ourselves with because they all think like us, sometimes look like us, they're all like us. And we get kind of uncomfortable, and it seems risky, once again, to have somebody in
Sure.
your circle who thinks differently. But you're right. In order for us to see things differently, we need somebody who challenges our thinking. Now, you're somebody who's had to reinvent yourself about 5 times based on our conversations. And I believe the last time would have been during COVID, where, even your business model had to change. So, how difficult or easy is it to reinvent yourself as someone who's had to do that so often?
So there's a Yiddish proverb that says the only person that likes change is a wet baby. So
Okay.
let me be the first to admit that I don't like to change, right? But
Right.
obviously, life, business, society, it forces me. So one of the things I've had to realize is every change that I have been invited to over 18 years, I'm on my fifth reinvention,
Hmm.
is understanding there will come a time where you will have to let go what you know so
Hmm.
you can let come what wants to emerge.
Hmm.
And when you let go, it's not discounting the knowledge that you have acquired,
Hmm.
but Dr. Henry Cloud wrote a book called Necessary Endings, and the central thesis of his book
Hmm.
is we all have to go through a purging process where we purge or prune that which has grown in order for a new harvest to take place. So what I
Hmm.
recognize is in this 5.0 shift that I've had to make is I've had to be uncomfortable being comfortable and releasing the need to know what tomorrow holds. So
Hmm.
other words, I was talking with one of my mentors, and he said, you have to improvise the future.
Mm,
I have to understand what's coming my way.
mhm,
How do I embrace that? And by the future in the present, by my behaviors, by my habits, by my actions. So, what I've recognized in becoming a person that's focused on Zoom, I've had to embrace the virtual for who I become in the process and
mm,
not worry about, oh my goodness, what about my strategy for the next 30, 60, 90, 180 days? How do I become so present to this moment and serve the moment, let go of the future to embrace the now, and understanding that when I embrace this now, and solve a problem, bring a spirit of excellence to this moment, the moment will create momentum, and momentum will create monumental results.
mm,
Reverse engineer. Results come from momentum, and the root word for momentum is moments. So, what I've
mm,
had to understand is
mhm,
embracing this moment is about releasing the need to be right and
mhm.
releasing the need to try to make something happen and just step into the present and be the best version of myself in that moment.
I the reason why I love, 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 love whenever I chat with you, Simon, I follow your newsletter, etc., is because it just it hits a spot. It hits a spot. Because for me personally, and I'll just share this quickly, last year I told my sister this up to this morning. I'm like, last year in December I was doing this yoga stretching session, and I remember lying on the floor thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do for 2020. Like, normally I had all these plans and all these things I wanted to do, and for the first time I was like, I don't know what what's next. I couldn't figure it out. And it's kind of ironic because 2020 has been a year that nobody has been able to predict what's next.
Yeah,
So if you were kind of in a rock solid place and you thought that this was going to be your plan, I think a lot of us got a serious shift when March started.
totally. Totally. And now we're being invited to grow from
Mhm.
what we don't know.
Grow from what we don't know. I love that. And then let go what you know so you can let come what is to emerge. Let come what is to
Absolutely.
emerge. So, Crystal, Simon, we're going to pause right here for any questions or comments. So, Crystal, over to you. I see the chat, but I can't open it just yet. So, what do you have for us?
Right, that's no problem. So we have a few questions, and one is from Mark. As a slashy hybrid animal, am I better off finding the contrasting animal or the complementary animal? As a slashy hybrid animal, am I better off finding the contrasting animal or the complementary animal? That's the first question.
So, Mark, what I would say to that question, follow your gut. What does your gut tell you to do? What do you sense about what works for you? And I'm not trying to avoid answer your question or dodge it, but one of the things I've come to know is that the answer is within you. So I'm just putting the mirror in front of you, inviting you to realize that 80% of your nervous system is in your gut. So, from a gut level instinct, what do you sense that you should do at this season?
Right, I'll go into, thank you very much. Go into another question. In addressing the now, should there be an I on the next? So that question is from Mark, and I think it kind of ties back into a question that I wanted to ask as well in terms of when you go into the interview process now. Do you think it's still relevant to be asked, where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years?
Yeah,
Mark
yes.
asks, in addressing the now, should there be an I on the next?
Yeah, so let me answer this question two ways. So, as it relates to where you are personally right now, I would invite you to embrace the now and not worry about the next, because worry has a first cousin called stress, and stress has a BFF called fear. And when stress, fear, and worry of the unknown get on the same page, they slow down the human operating system, or what many would call the neurons in our brains are not developing like they should. So focus on the now, be present in the now, embrace the now. So many people are trying to find, what is my purpose? Why am I here? This question has been around since Aristotle and Socrates and Plato. That's not the question. The question is, how do I do right now what's in front of me? All right, now let me answer the question a second way. If you're going for an interview and they ask yourself, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? That is a very interesting question because they want to see if you have vision beyond the job. Okay. So in that particular instance, you want to say, as I continue to grow with the organization, you don't have to say it like I would say it. As I continue to grow with the organization, I would like to identify opportunities to add value. And in adding value, I believe my skills will grow and the right opportunities will emerge for me to help the organization fulfill its mission. That's an answer, non-answer, because if you say, I want to be here 5 years from now, the world is going to change. It's going to change in 30 days. So that's an age-old question. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? How about I just want to add value, and as I'm adding value, the next opportunity will present itself. Give them a different answer than the last candidate that was going for the job.
We can probably take one more, Nick, before we go into the video. And this one is from Lydia. The loudest voices are the ones in our heads, and they're often negative. How do we actively quieten the negative voices?
The moment you hear the negative voices, I invite you to take a piece of paper and begin to write down what is right, R-I-G-H-T, right about you, and invite yourself to begin to focus on what's right, the new story, the new narrative, to squash the negativity or the stories that's in your head that become what I would call the gremlins of brilliance. So the moment you hear the old tape, it's then up to you to say, I'm going to cancel this, but you have to replace it with something else, okay?
Right, we have one more. I'm not sure you
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and give that quickly.
Okay.
Yes.
Right, so also from Lydia, my generation spans two worlds and ways of doing things. We want security, but we also want different and risk. We don't want to keep working how our parents did. What ways can we deal with this roller coaster?
So I would invite you to think about what is the best of what you've learned from your parents' world that you like and don't like. And as you think about where you are, what are your must-haves, your non-negotiables, and how can you create a hybrid future where what is old is new, what is new is old, and create the future that works for you.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Simon, for that. And it's interesting, one of the questions posed by Lydia, because that was actually one of the questions I was going to ask you, Simon, because again, there are people who have that negative self-chatter, I am too old for this, I don't have the resources. There are a lot of excuses we build up as to why we can't reinvent ourselves, why we can't spark that restart. So I love the fact that, you referenced that we need to change the narrative. But sometimes that calls for us to self-reflect on what we actually do right.
Yes, absolutely. And there's one more question in the chat.
Sure.
Did you just step out of your comfort zone? Did you just say step out of your comfort zone? But that's where my expertise is. So here's the deal. Is your expertise your floor or your ceiling? Only you can answer that question. But whoever asked this question, I think it's Ebola. I want you to get a hold of a book called Range. And Range is written by an author named David Epstein. It's a phenomenal read. My former boss at Disney recommended it to me, and I've been enjoying reading it, taking notes. But one of the things he talks about is in Range is you have a expertise that you're comfortable with, but where the world is going back to next normal, organizations and businesses, and even people that want you to bring your solution, they're looking for men and women that have range. In other words, they can take a body of information, synthesize it, and move it from place to place, industry to industry, because they have range, not just specificity in an expertise. So now let me add balance to that. You want the surgeon to use the knife in the surgery the same way. That's special. That person specializes. But a man or woman that has range can go in any domain and bring and pull from different schools of thinking to be a solution to a problem in a moment. David Epstein, the book is called Range.
Okay. And you also mentioned another book too, Simon, Necessary Endings as well.
Yes,
So already
Dr. Henry
we
Cloud.
got, who is that one by again?
Dr. Henry Cloud,
Okay.
Necessary Endings.
All right. So again, we've got two books. I'm sure people are already Googling on the site to try to find those and get those purchased or on their Kindle. So thanks for that. So we're going to go into the Goalcast video. We referenced this in your introduction. And of course, after we watch it, I want you to give us a little bit on the story about that.
Children up until the age of 4 are operating at the genius level. The same group of children were studied in their early 20s, and only 10% were still operating at the genius, or what I call the brilliance level. And in their late 20s, early 30s, only 2% were still operating at the genius or brilliance level. So the question you have, like I had, is where did this genius or brilliance go? It didn't go anywhere, but it became buried by a society that says color within the lines.
Simon, I absolutely love that video. When I saw it come out on Facebook, I absolutely loved it. Tell us, where did that come from? Talk to a little bit about that.
Yeah, Success Magazine a few years ago had invited me to come and MC their big event in Dallas with Scooter Braun, John Gray, Dr. Daniel Amen, you name it. I had a chance to introduce all of them. And on the second day, they said, hey, would you open up and share? So what you saw, the 3 minutes, was just 12 minutes. I was supposed to have 20 minutes, but I just took 12 minutes and shared my heart, shared my story, because it was the first time publicly that I was revealing this deeper truth. So Madison, who is now 18, just took her to college a few weeks ago. No longer my baby girl. She is a young woman. Oh, she's a young lady now. And so, yeah, it was a story of the journey of really understanding what it means to be a father, and try to make what was wrong better.
Okay. And I mean, when you saw that video come out, and I'm sure that you got so many people talking about the impact of that. Just, I mean, when you think of the amount of people who viewed it, it must have been very, very a powerful impact.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I know how to raise my hand but not lower it. So I had a question to ask before the video played, but the video talked a bit about it too, which is what's the difference between cognitive entrenchment and the default mode network? Because both of those are about kind of getting into a rut.
Yeah. So both of them are kind of like one and the same. But what's interesting about cognitive entrenchment, it's the awareness that it's okay to step out of my comfort zone for who I will become in the process. So it is as simply as, what is one step, something different that I could do tonight or tomorrow that that stretches me a little bit? And what do I learn? What do I grow? What do I discover in making just a choice? And whereas the default mode is, this is the way it's always been, nothing is going to change. But cognitive entrenchment is, I have the awareness that I can attempt to do something different.
Actually, Simon, maybe that's something for us to all think about, just fresh off, because the purpose of these classes, for everybody, is you take this knowledge and you apply it. So, to come out of this session and asking yourself, all being well, wake up tomorrow, what one step can I do differently?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for that question that was raised. And, you know, it's about mindset, and how we address that. And again, I go back to the teaser video, and you talked about mindset, skill set, will set.
Yes.
Mindset, skill set, will set. And I don't know if there's anything like the secret sauce when you come to reinvention, but um, those are the three things maybe you want to address a little bit, in terms of what is required when we talk about reinvention, and trying to get ourselves into that new place.
So mindset is all about something has happened, global pandemic, and now I build a story around what has happened. And sometimes the story in my head becomes more powerful than what happened. So, in order to really be mindful of my mindset, I must create a story or a narrative that I believe that is in alignment with my head, my heart, my hands. So, for instance, what is right about me? What is my purpose? What's my vision? What's the value that I bring to the world? What are people coming to me for, asking me for? How do I be present to the moment and develop the mindset to make a choice, to then have action that has behaviors and habits tied to it. And it's also recognizing in mindset that you don't decide the future, you decide your habits, and your habits decide the future. So, are there some new habits or behaviors that I need to adapt? That's number one. Skill set is understanding that according to LinkedIn, as they've looked at their research with over 500 million people on their platform, there are 5 skills that are critically important over the next decade. Skill number one, creativity. Skill number two, adaptability. Skill number three, collaboration. Skill number four, persuasion. And skill number five, emotional intelligence. So when you think about skill set, as you look at those 5, which one of the 5 are you being invited to at this season to hone in on and to develop? And then the will set is simply understanding that tough times don't last, in the words of Dr. Robert Schuller. Tough times don't last, but tough people do. There's something that was talked about by Dr. Rick Snyder, the late great Dr. Rick Snyder, who was a scholar at the University of Kansas in hope theory. And one of the things that he taught is that there is willpower and way power. Willpower is there is the ability to find the will to move into the future. And then way power is I have hope that there is a better outcome. So when we talk about will set, it's embracing when I have the will, I will find a way. But let me say it to you a different way. A hopeless person is a helpless person, but a hopeful person is a helpful person. Whoever has the most hope has the most influence, because all of a sudden people want to follow him or her because they have that will set that creates the way that others don't see. This
I
is
love
good
that.
stuff. I'm giving y'all some of my good stuff. I tell
I
you what.
know. I know, like I'm here writing copious notes. I don't know. I am writing copious notes. So I am quite sure there's some people here who are like jotting like crazy. And actually, I think I missed when you talked about the 5 skill sets. It was creativity, collaboration, persuasion, emotional intelligence. I think I'm missing one.
Adaptability.
Adaptability. Okay. And you say something that's interesting in terms of when we start putting in the work and, you know, carving our own path,
Mhm.
that interestingly enough, people start watching and they start quietly following. It is almost that sometimes without realizing it, we give people permission to maybe try the same.
Mm,
I,
exactly.
and So I love that, because I think some of us don't realize that we have the potential to be some very powerful leaders, even
Yes.
if we don't have a leadership position. And actually, let's talk about leadership, because in this year in particular, on a global scale, we're seeing the importance of leadership. We're having all these random world examples of leadership, but even in our own homes or in our own communities, in our own offices, wherever we're working, we are also seeing that element of leadership play out. So what is it that we need to understand when it comes to leadership? Because very often they're the ones that people look to in order to create reinvention if we're in an organization. And for those in the audience who are leaders, what is it that they can also help do in this time?
Well, first of all, the job of a leader during the midst of uncertainty is to invite men and women on a journey to discover the leader within themselves.
Hmm.
So, a leader can never take a person to a place that he or she has not been themselves or has been in advance. That's the first thing.
Right.
The second thing, in order to really be a leader that's worth their salt to lead the field, one of my mentors was the late great Dr. Miles Monroe, and he would often say that character is more important than promotion,
Hmm.
because you can get promoted to a level, but your character will keep you there.
Hmm.
So if you have true character as a leader, you never chase followers, followers chase you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Real leadership is not about likes, comments, reposts, reshares, friends, or links. Real leadership is when I have the right character, I
Hmm.
never have to compromise to get recognized.
Hmm.
So at this moment right now, I believe real leadership is about empathy, where
Hmm.
I come alongside humanity to understand, how do I walk a mile in your shoes and connect instead of communicate. So real leadership is about embracing transformation to connect. Everything else is leading the status quo. So what am I being invited to at this season? To be empathetic, to listen instead of tell, to serve this moment, and
Hmm.
to recognize that leadership is caught and taught. What are people catching from me as they listen to me? What are people catching from you as they listen to you? So,
Hmm.
three practical things for those who are leaders tonight listening to us. Connection is the new currency. How do I begin to connect to the needs of my community? Number two, how do I begin to understand that purpose is more important than profit? If you put purpose before profit, you will become more profitable. I know it's counterintuitive,
Hmm.
but that's just where we are. All the research says that businesses that will thrive in the next decade will put
Hmm.
purpose before profit, because purpose becomes a true north that attracts talent who want to make meaning, not just money. And
Hmm.
then the third thing is to really think about, as a leader, how do I begin to, in the words of Dr. Brene Brown, realize that vulnerability does not mean that I am a wimp or a wuss, but
Hmm.
vulnerability means that I have the understanding of emotional regulation, to realize that everyone has gone through something in these last 7 months and everybody is responding to it differently.
Hmm.
And how do I have an emotional clue to recognize I don't know what I don't know? And it's okay if I say I don't know, but I, like you, we are learning together. So real leadership is moving from me to we. And when
Hmm.
I move from me to we are in this together, and we're going to learn and improvise the future in the present.
So I'm going to go to Crystal shortly for any last questions, but just two things you touched on, and I want to come back to those after Crystal asked those questions. One on this matter of vulnerability, because for some of us that's almost like a bad word, this idea of being vulnerable, especially in certain positions and places. And then the second is that we are in a society that now thrives on measures success by the likes, the shares, the comments, and like it almost becomes this sort of validation. So I'm going to park those two and go over to Crystal and come back to those.
Okay, we have a question again from Lydia. Can you speak more about persuasion? That's a question from Lydia. And we also have someone who's asking to have the names of the books repeated. So what I would do is once you give me the names, I will post it in the chat. But Lydia is asking, can you speak more about persuasion?
Okay, so the two books, Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud, Range by David Epstein. So when I talk about persuasion, it's really understanding that language is the software of the mind. Anything that happens in the world, it's because of the power of language. Every discipline has a lexicon that shapes how we perceive and understand a matter. So for those of you who are public speakers, it's understanding that when I upgrade my verbal software, because language is the software of the mind, that I am helping people shape how to think about a matter. So persuasion is, how do I begin to use my words as tools, like a plumber uses a wrench, like a carpenter uses a hammer, like a surgeon uses a knife? How do I begin to use my words as tools to persuade or to invite people into a conversation where they will level up in their thinking, because you are challenging them to become better because of what you're sharing?
I like that, the idea of leveling up. And it almost goes back from the beginning. We have to learn how to level up, but that comes from how we challenge ourselves in our own thinking, the people we have in our circle who challenges our thinking,
Yes.
and then being able to help others in that process as well. I
Yes.
think Lydia had a part two to that. So it's this idea of taking risk.
Okay.
And how do we teach our children not to be so risk averse?
All right. So something I'm going to do, I do have a freebie for everyone, and I'm just going to post it in the chat. So if you click on the link, this will take you into getting a chapter of my book. And also we have an ebook called Virtual Confidence, which will give you some strategies on persuasion in the virtual world that we live in now.
Yes.
So you can experience that. That link is posted in the chat, and Crystal, you can post that again. So how do we encourage our children to become risk takers? And I don't have the perfect answer for this question, because I have now two young adults that I realize, as my mother used to tell me, no two children are alike.
Mm.
So what I have to understand is, how is Daniel wired? How is Madison wired? How does Daniel learn? How does Madison learn? And then based on their learning style, visual, auditory, hands-on, how do I begin to invite them as their father into exploring something that gives them the resilience and expands their capacity? So I like to say, instead of risk taking, how do I help expand their capacity for the world that they're entering in? So how do I help them with the mindset? How do I pass on lessons learned through storytelling, so that I'm expanding capacity? So when life happens and they're faced with a moment, let's call it risk, they have the capacity to step into the moment and not be fearful, but to be fearless, because their father has expanded, I've expanded their capacity over time to embrace that moment.
Okay. So I'm glad you put that in the link there, Simon, because one of the things I would love to encourage people to do is to check out your website. I know, and they can sign up for your newsletter.
Yes.
And then, Simon does a lot of fantastic sessions where you can feel free to join, sign up and join, learn more, spend some more time with him. Chris, do we have any other questions in the chat?
No, we don't, but I can see that everyone had a takeaway. So people have very good comments, and I think that from the very beginning, some of the things that he said, I think there was one from an investor. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So he was very impressed with that.
Mm-hmm.
And don't think I have any more, but I myself have been taking some notes. So anything more we would, I guess, we'll be able to see it when it's posted as well, that we can go through and take our own notes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. And we've gotten permission to, once we are finished, Simon, we'll share the video with you and you can let us know what we can upload if people want to catch a replay.
Sure.
Because we have quite a few people who we know registered but may have missed for different reasons. And I always get those, emails after the session going, I missed it, help. But I think this has been a fantastic conversation, and I think people have been taking lots of notes because there have been so much information that you shared for us. So I want to wrap up with the last question that I had flagged was this idea of vulnerability, because you mentioned something too, coming from the Goldcast video where you put yourself out there.
Mhm.
That's a level of vulnerability, but the fact that now more than ever, where everything is so uncertain, um, it's almost like the opposite. We need leaders who are willing to show some vulnerability
Mhm.
to help in leading us forward, which is to me almost interestingly ironic, because
Mhm.
you would think you'd want people who are just charging forward, like I know all of this, but actually we need leaders that show vulnerability. So talk just very briefly, if you can, on what that means. It doesn't take away, as you say, it doesn't make you wimpy.
Right. So vulnerability, especially during this time of COVID-19, is to understand releasing the need to be right and to be in control.
Mm,
When I release the need to be in control, I still have the mask on and I will not let people in because I must protect myself. And that is really a scarcity mindset, because that
mm,
scarcity mindset is I don't want to let anyone in. I have to hold on to who I am, and a tight fist can never receive anything. But the moment
yes.
I understand vulnerability, I realize that an open hand is always full, and I take the mask off and I recognize when I am my authentic self. I stop comparing myself to everyone else and I overcome the what I call the CIC, the comparison inferiority complex.
Hmm.
The reason people don't become vulnerable is because they're comparing where they are to where someone else is. And if I share too much of myself and that person knows more about me, they're going to use that against me. But when you begin to recognize people don't see you as you are, they see you as they are. So they see you through their lens and try to confine you to their small world. And sometimes you can have a 50 by 60 dream, but you are talking to someone that has 8 by 10 thinking, and
Hmm.
their scarcity mindset rubs off on you. So you never move to abundance and you stay a person who is small because you're not vulnerable to show up and to be your authentic self and
Hmm.
to be okay with who you are and where you are. So when I'm in my swim lane and I really embrace who I am, I'm not threatened if you are outlapping me,
Hmm.
because I recognize that in life, everything is timing. So I am vulnerable to laugh, to cry, to be my authentic self because I am growing and I like me. So I'll say this and I stop. So this morning I woke up about 3:30 a.m. And I wasn't even planning to do this, but I think this might help somebody. So in my journal, I just began to write just what I was thinking and feeling in that moment. And I said in my journal, and there's an app called Day One Journal. And I wrote in my journal at 3:45 this morning, I love you, Simon T. Bailey. I love who you are. I love who you are becoming. I love the fact that you will put your head down and do the work. I love you even more because in a world of racial justice, injustice, and generational poverty, God has allowed you to be exposed to and experience a drop in the bucket of what the top 1% experience. More importantly, you've grown as a man of character, faith, hope, and possibility. I love the fact that you love your children and you seek to be involved with their lives. I love the fact that you've survived and have thrived. I love your discipline of getting up early. I love the fact that you have friends from different walks of life. I love how you move in and out of circles with ease and very little stress. I love how you have a heart for people that are hurting. I love how you jump on things to learn. I love the fact that you are committed to paying in cash all 4 years of college for Daniel and Madison. I love that you send your mother a check every month and have for the last 7 years. And I went on and on. What I recognize, the reason people aren't vulnerable is because they don't love themselves. When you love who you are, you can show up and say, this is me, world, like me or lump it. But if you don't like me, I'm okay because I love me. And love is not what it says, it's what it does. And so I can't love you if I don't love me. But the moment I love me, I can love you because I'm not trying to make you like me.
Oh, Simon. Wow. I need a moment. I need a moment because I don't think we tell ourselves, we don't have that moment to say, I love you. I love.
I love
Whew.
me. I
All right.
love me. I'm a Black man in America. And this for me, it took me an hour to go through this. And part of the reason, and certainly all of you are in the Caribbean, but some of the challenges that Black people have here in America, because of everything with slavery and everything, is at some level. Now, what I'm about to say is the opinion of the presenter. I don't speak for all Black people because everybody that looks like me does not speak for me. But here's my observation. If Black people love themselves and begin to say that I love me, we could change the world because we come from the motherland. We come from the cradle of civilization where love began, right? So I believe where the healing is to moving to true vulnerability is I love me. And that's not arrogant. That's not you saying something out of character. I love me. And the moment you can love yourself, you become unstoppable. Unstoppable.
Oh, and of course, the audience comments, Simon, they love it. They love it. They love you for speaking that truth because I don't think we get that truth often enough reinforced to us. So, ladies and gentlemen, when you click off of this, go and look at yourself in the mirror and affirm yourself and say to yourself, I love me, Simon. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Simon T. Bailey. Oh my gosh. So honored, so honored. I know there are people who are already waiting for the replay. Somebody put that in the comments already. They're like, I need to watch this again and again and again.
Hey, tell them to share it with their friends, their family. Just share it. Get it out. Get it out. It doesn't matter. This is my love to you.
And remember, Simon has put in the chat the link. So for those of you who are meeting him for the very first time, now you see why I wanted this masterclass. Go check him out on his website, all of his programs, all of his the newsletter, so much great information that comes through that. So try and sign up for that. Simon, it's been a blessing to have you tonight. I want to say thank you to you for being here. And I know when we talk about the masterclass that sparks conversation and challenges the thinking, tonight we certainly had that with you. Mark, Ray, thank you so much for being our tech support. Crystal, thank you so much for monitoring the chat as the question co-host. I'd like to say a special thank you to the magnificent Vision team who's been helping me on this project. Gary, Georgianne, Lydia, Nikita, Sasha, and Rhonda, you are my blessing. Simon, when you talk about people who challenge, they're my challenge team.
Wow.
So I am so appreciative of them. To you who are in the audience, thank you so much for being here. I know you all are loving this from the comments. And thank you for participating in the conversation and the questions. Our next masterclass is October the 27th at 6:30 p.m. We will have some musical icons, Rick Rock from The Shaggy, It Wasn't Me. For those of you in the Caribbean that know Square One Band, or Allison Hines, Anderson Armstrong, George Jones. We're going to be talking about the business of music in the Caribbean, but the how do you remain authentic to yourself while trying to drive success in the music industry. And that's a particularly interesting kind of conversation for Caribbean musicians who do soca and reggae, as those icons do. So viable option, endless struggle. You don't want to miss that panel, and Crystal will share that link with you. Until next time, everybody have a fantastic night. And Simon, thanks again. All right.